Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with your weekly What a Deck profile. This week, going second Inspector Border, as brought to you by Patreon sponsor Robert Roosingh. I'll start by going over everything in here, and then I'll explain how it works. So for monsters, we're playing 2 Cyber Eltanin, 3 Cyber Dragon, 3 Galaxy Soldier, 3 of the titular Inspector Border, 3 Thunder King Ryo, 2 Cyber Dragon Dry, 3 Honest, 3 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and 3 Cyber Dragon Core are spells, 3 Instant Fusion, 3 Pot of Desires, 3 Cyber Repair Plant, and 3 Twin Twisters. Our only trap, 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Our extra deck consists of 2 Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon, 1 Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, 1 Sea Monster of Theseus, 2 Panzer Dragons, 1 Leo, 1 Scar Light, 1 Black Rose, 2 Cyber Dragon Infinity, 1 Pleiades, 2 Cyber Nova Dragon, and 1 Cliffort Genius. The side deck I'll go over in a bit. So as the name implies, this deck is based around Inspector Border. If you're unfamiliar with this card, it is a light level 4 machine-type monster with 2,000 attack and defense, and a rather complex effect. Basically, you can't normal summon or special summon it if you control a monster, and while it's face up, both players can only activate monster effects up to the number of types of monsters on the field, with type in this instance referring to the different colored cards like Rituals, Fusions, Synchros, Ixies, Pendulums, Links. If none of those cards are on the field, then no monster effects can be activated. Now the standard Inspector Border deck strategy is to just play this with a whole bunch of draw power and a whole bunch of traps, summon this first turn, lay down 5 back row to protect it, and basically just prevent your opponent from playing the game. Which is a pretty devastating strategy to most decks, but it only works if you go first, which is kind of a big weakness. This version of the deck can still do pretty well going first, but it's designed to do even better going second. The idea is instead of preventing your opponent from building a board, you let them build it, play a whole bunch of removal to wipe it out, and once you've gotten rid of their resources, you can then top it off with Inspector Border or some other stun cards, and that'll prevent them from making any sort of recovery. That's why we're playing Evenly Matched and Pot of Desires to try to get to it as soon as possible. Might be a little bit on the meta side of things, a little bit more expensive for me, but there's no better field nuke in the game, especially if you're going second. In addition, we also have Raigeki, Dark Hole, and even Lightning Vortex in the side deck, all of which are also pretty good field wipes for monsters, and I'd actually recommend playing these in the main deck instead of the Twin Twisters, if you're playing matches. I originally played these in the main deck myself, but I ended up having to trade them out because I play singles for the main What a Deck video, and in testing, I kept auto-losing to like Dark Magicians and Counter Fairies because I had no spell trap removal. I think against most decks, though, the monster removal is far more important, so you'll probably want to switch these up. Play Raigeki, Dark Hole, 1 Lightning Vortex instead of the Twin Twisters, and only put the Twisters in if you come up against a spell trap heavy deck. But anyway, in addition to the spell trap field wipes, we're also playing Cyber Eltanin. This card must be special summoned from your hand by banishing all light machine monsters on your field or in your graveyard. It gains attack and defense equal to the number of monsters banished times 500, and most importantly for us, when it's summoned, you send all other face-up monsters to the graveyard. Most of our monsters are light machine monsters, so if you get even 1 on the field or in the grave, you can summon this and just wipe the field of monsters. And of course, if you get it later game, when you have a whole bunch of cards in your graveyard, then it's got a big hefty attack boost as well. Other than that, we've got some single monster removal in the form of the Chimera Tech cards. Both of these are contact fusions that you can summon using your opponent's monsters. Fortress Dragon lets you use any number of machine-type monsters and Cyber Dragon, which is useful against certain decks. FAs come to mind since they're all machines. While Mega Fleet lets you use any monster in the extra monster zone, along with any Cyber Dragon monster. These are both great for getting rid of big boss monsters or just troublesome monsters in general. There's very few cards out there that are immune to being used as fusion material, so if they're unaffected by trap cards or monsters or can't be destroyed, you can get rid of it with a Mega Fleet or a Chimera Tech pretty easily. Now that's our removal. Everything else in the deck kind of fits into the stun portion of the deck. Along with Inspector Border, Thunder King Ryo is your other normal summonable monster that locks down your opponent. He stops both players from adding cards from their deck to their hands except by drawing them, and can negate a built-in summon by tributing himself. He's got 100 less attack, but unlike Inspector Boarder, you can normal summon this, even if you have another monster on the field, which can actually be pretty devastating in combination with some of these other combos I'll talk about in a moment. We're also playing a couple hand traps. We've got Ghost Ogre, just for destroying face-up, spell traps, monsters, whatever you need, just good to disrupt your opponent's combos on their turn. And Honest for battle protection. I don't think I need to explain Honest, this classic Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's kind of fallen out of favor recently, which is why it's back to 3 after being at 1 for so long. But it actually works really well in this deck. Oftentimes, the only way your opponent can get rid of like an Inspector Boarder is to summon an extra deck monster that can beat over it. But once they do, you're both allowed to use one monster effect, so when they attack, you can just use that Honest to get rid of it. Honest is also good for protecting your other big stun card, which is Cyber Dragon Infinity. Can be special summoned on top of Cyber Dragon Nova, which can be made with any 2 level 5 machine-type monsters. Cyber Dragon is of course a level 5 machine. Dry makes itself level 5 when it's normal summoned. You can use Instant Fusion to summon the level 5 machine-type Panzer Dragon. And of course there's Galaxy Soldier, a level 5 machine that you can special summon from your hand by discarding any light monster. And it also searches another copy of itself when it's summoned. So a whole bunch of ways to get this, which lets you get this. And in addition to its removal that comes in the form of once per turn attaching any face-up monster to it as Ixie material, CDI can also detach to negate once per turn during either player's turn. Oftentimes people will bait out the negation so that they can summon a big monster and attack over infinity, and a lot of them aren't expecting the Honest. That's where you get them. Unfortunately, it's not really possible to summon CDI and Inspector Boarder in one turn, since you can't normal or special summon this if you control a monster. But you can summon Infinity and Thunder King in the same turn, which can be almost as effective as stun, especially if you've already wiped out your opponent's field. Alternatively, if you make Cyber Dragon Infinity using only special summons, you could still set Inspector Boarder, and then flip summon it next turn. It's kind of slow, but with the 2k defense of Boarder and Infinity protecting it, and again, especially if you've wiped out your opponent's field, it can actually be a pretty viable strategy. As for the rest of our extra deck, it's just kind of a toolbox. We're running a couple Synchros since Ghost Ogre is a tuner, as well as Sea Monster of Theseus, which is also a tuner that you can summon with Instant Fusion. The Synchros, along with Pleiades, are basically just my personal preference. Run them if you feel like it, or you could replace them with other Synchros and Ixies if you prefer, or even rank 4 Ixies. You could put a couple of them, whatever you feel like. Our one Link monster is Cliffort Genius, which I just use because it's a Link 2 with downwards facing arrows that can be made with any 2 machines. Sometimes you get a Chimera Tech stuck in your extra monster zone when you really would rather have Infinity, and this allows you to get rid of your big fusion monsters by linking it with pretty much any other monster you have, opens up your zones, and allows you to make that Infinity. And with that, all we have left in the main deck is Cyber Repair Plant. This is our main search card, and the reason we run the Cyber Dragon engine with the Inspector Boarder. Basically, you can activate this while Cyber Dragon is in your graveyard, and add any light machine monster from your deck to your hand. So, in addition to searching Cyber Dragon, it searches Eltanin, it searches Galaxy Soldier, and of course, Inspector Boarder. So you have kind of a toolbox there. Depending on what you need, you can make Mega Fleet, CDI, wipe the field, or lock down your opponent. And this card itself is searchable by Cyber Dragon Core. Whenever you normal summon it, you can add a Cyber Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. And not only that, but Core, along with Dry, their names become Cyber Dragon while they're on the field or in the graveyard. So this is actually a pretty good starting card. You can normal summon this, grab your Cyber Repair Plant, tag it out with whatever your opponent has for Mega Fleet Dragon, and you'll have a Cyber Dragon in the graveyard then, so you can activate Repair Plant and search whatever you need. And that's pretty much the main deck. Pretty simple overall, just a couple little components there. All that remains is the side deck, and most of this is stuff I'd actually consider. The field wipes I already mentioned, swapping out these 3 for Twin Twisters. I'd also consider running 2 extra copies of Lightning Vortex for certain decks that you really want a lot of destruction for. The Kaijus I'm playing over here are just even more spot removal, and Jizukiru in particular has a lot of synergy with the deck. It's a light machine monster, so you could search it with the Repair Plant, you can discard it for Galaxy Soldier, you can even summon it to your opponent's field, summon a Cyber Dragon, and then make your Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Lots of different combos you can do with that. The other fusions we have here are just alternative boss monsters, and both of these can be summoned really easily with Overload Fusion. This card summons any Dark Machine fusion monster by banishing the materials from your field or your graveyard. This could be a really great final move against decks that have a lot of negation and hand traps. They get rid of everything, everything's in the graveyard, and then you activate Overload Fusion and summon one of these two big behemoths. The only reason I'm not playing it is because we're not playing quite enough Cyber Dragons. Sometimes it can be dead in hand, it can be a little bit bricky. If you want, though, you could throw a couple more Cyber Dragons in here. You could even run this as a conversion deck. If you wanted to go first with this, try to lock them down, then maybe your opponent will force you to go second. You can take out the Inspector Borders and put in the Cyber Dragon fusions and go for a Cyber Dragon OTK in the second duel. Alternatively, while I didn't really mention it, you could actually run this as a conversion side deck and have the go first version of this. Put in Card of Demise and a whole bunch of traps and just trade out 15 cards from your main deck to your side deck. And basically just try to go, if you can go first, use that, and then if not, you switch over to this version of it. Finally, these last two cards are just alternate ideas. Originally, the idea was to make a more go-first sort of version of this with the light machines. Using Downbeat, you contribute any level 5 light machine monster with Downbeat and summon Inspector Border out of the deck. So with cards like Solar Windjammer, that's just if you control no monsters, you can special summon it. You can get to this really quickly. I ended up going with a more go-second version of it, but if you wanted to try to make the light machine stun with the Honest and the Thunder Kings and still have a go-first variant, these are some options. Maybe instead of the Cyber Dragons, have these, since Cyber Dragon requires your opponent to have a monster in order to summon it, so you can't use it first turn. You should note, though, Downbeat, the monster that you tribute has to have an original level of 5. So you can't use something like Cyber Dragon Dry that increases its level. It has to be level 5 in the graveyard. But anyway, that's this week's deck. As always, if you want to see it in action, check out the main video. It's linked down in the description and also on the end card. Next week, I'll be playing something a little more archetype-themed. Not sure what yet, but we'll see. Until then, good luck and have fun.